Okay, it looks like we've got Kathleen. And we're just waiting for folks to get started. This is our first time using Zoom for a webinar, everyone. So as we're watching you come into the waiting room, we just want to make sure that everything is operational before we get started. For those of you who have arrived and are just joining us, you should see on your screen there's a section for Q&A, and please feel free to add any questions, or if you just want to give us a thumbs up and let us know that you're able to hear us and see us, that would be great.
I see all.
I see Peter's hands up. Okay, good. Perfect.
I'm seeing some hands.
All right. Oh, we've got a great crew today. So I think, let's see. Yay, greetings from snowy Vermont. Awesome, it's working. So I am super excited. I think we'll get started. I know it's just, a couple minutes past 1, but we've got a lot to cover today. And as folks continue to join us, for those of you who just are joining us, this is our first time using Zoom for our webinars. We're really excited to get off of the old GoToWebinar platform and expand through our Zoom universe here. And for the first webinar that we're hosting, because we're going to have so many different innkeepers coming and going throughout the start of the webinar, we do have everyone on mute right now. But please submit your questions through the Q&A panel there. Tim's going to be moderating for us as we go through the session, and we'll interject with questions as they become appropriate. We are recording today's session, so we'll send you a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the PDFs of all the slides for you as well. And we'll be sending that tomorrow after the webinar finishes and we get everything processed and learn how it works on this new platform. So for those of you who I have not met yet, my name is Janice Hurley, and I am the general manager of bnbfinder. I started back with bnbfinder.com. Gosh, when was that, Tim? About 2002, I think was when I started. Back when we were in Denver, Colorado, moving the company to Austin, and have pretty much been in the B&B industry my entire life since we acquired bnbfinder back in April of 2019. We've been here, and I'm going to pass it over to Tim so he can introduce himself as well for all of you who haven't met Tim. I'd be surprised how many people on here haven't met us yet, but you never know.
Thanks, Janice. So yeah, my name's Tim Wilson, and I am heading up all the sales here at bnbfinder. Janice and I go way, way back. She and I worked together for a very long time at bnbfinder.com. I started at bnbfinder.com back in the last century, 1999, and here we are, keeping it going here today, well, over 22 years later. So yeah, glad to be a part of this, and great to have you guys all here today. I think Janice has a great little webinar here for us.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, we'll be sending out the recording, and for this session, we don't have the video sharing set up for all of the attendees. This is something that we're going to be opening up after we've got this new platform set up. We're going to be using this for a lot of our product demos and feedback sessions between members and the team here at bnbfinder. So we really can't wait to kick that off and to be able to see everyone's faces and all be on the same channel here. So for today's session, we traditionally have done a recap of the previous year and talked a little bit about some of the things that we're going to be working on in the coming year. Certainly the transition from 2020 to 2021 was unlike any other. And I think 2021 heading into 2022 is a little bit more of what we've been used to. But for anyone who's seen me present in the last 3 years, I've had this slide. And I keep it more now as a reminder for myself, because it continues to ring true about, and of course I read it differently, that A successful human is one who can lay a firm foundation with the bricks others have thrown at them. And all of us in this industry, from innkeepers to vendors and everything in between, I think we've done an extraordinary job at what we've built with what's been thrown at us over the last few years here. And it's funny, as I was putting this deck together and going back, and I'm sure much like many of you, when we go back and try and put time around certain events that have happened over the last couple of years, it's unbelievable to me when I look at where we were, not only at the beginning of 2021, but really as all of this started to evolve early into 2020 into where we are today and what we're looking into. So I thought we'd start today with a little bit about where we've been as an industry, as well as B&B Finder, and how we've evolved. So it's funny, Tim was coming to Austin, I think it was in September, for a team on-site, and I have a photo I'll be sharing with you a little bit further down in the presentation. But as we were talking about travel, picking up and being where we are today, certainly with Omicron, different properties have experienced different levels of guests visiting and things like that. But it wasn't long ago that pretty much the entire airline industry was grounded. And, back April 2020, that's what we were looking at that time. And, when we think about where we were as a business and what we were looking at the end of 2020 and our early 2021 planning as a business, really the recap, and I looked back, and it was almost impossible for us as a business to recap 2020, right? Because there were so many things that we couldn't anticipate. We had just taken over the business in April of 2019, and we acquired B&B Finder, as many of you know, when it was still on a WordPress platform. So we rebuilt the entire site and relaunched it right, I guess that was October of 2019, November 2019. And then the beginning of 2020 was really when the pandemic started to hit and things started to shut down. So, recapping 2020, it was really all about us, keeping going. There were still too many unknowns and things to predict. And really our focus as a business really changed to focusing on the traffic to B&B Finder, our core team, and making sure that we had the resources that we needed to be able to grow the brand and the business through the industry. At that time, certainly in early 2021, conferences were still in flux. There really weren't any set dates at the beginning of 2021 for conferences to meet in person. For the majority of 2020, we all still met via Zoom. And as we know in our industry, for us to have the opportunity to be able to sit down with you in person and have these conversations and get caught up, especially when we've been in the industry as long as we have, those relationships and those personal connections are so important to us. And when I look back at 2021, we hosted our first webinar in February of last year. And that was really to summarize what we were seeing in the upcoming spring survey that we had conducted at that time. So when we think about traffic and we think about B&B Finder, there's some things that I think are really important, not only for existing members to understand about our evolution as a business, but also for any non-members who maybe were previously members but haven't signed on recently. So when the pandemic, really started to lock things down, and as we headed into 2021, and still not really knowing, how much more the travel industry was going to open, we really wanted to make sure that as a business, we focused on what we wanted to achieve during that time. So traffic was at the top of our list. And we launched an initiative that was primarily focused on our SEO for the new B&B Finder site, since it had gone over to the new platform, as well as SERP and on-page content. So when I looked back and I pulled a couple graphs just to give you a visual of what it looked like. So if you look at, the end of December 2020, B&B Finder, we're that blue line that you see there. And what this represents is where our average rank was on Google at that time. And so this is purely from the organic keyword standpoint. So back in, late 2020, even early 2021, if you would go out as a traveler and you would search typical state, so say Vermont bed and breakfast, Texas bed and breakfast, terms like that a traveler might be searching for, the majority of our results were what I call 51st or worst, which means that when you look at a ranking for a certain keyword, then if it shows on Google 51 plus, that means that you are most likely showing on maybe the 10th or 11th page of search results. And we know that most travelers aren't going to go past the first page. So our goal as a business early 2021 was to make sure that we were focused on the right initiatives, the right keywords, so that we could start ranking on the first page, if not in the top 3 results on Google for all state search terms. So that's what we initially focused on. And then we started to focus on our top destinations. So for anyone who's currently a member, who's been with us since really the early days and then on to post-acquisition, what we've heard from a lot of members is the increase in exposure that they've started to experience as members. And that's really a direct result of this traffic project and initiative that we worked on. With our team, we also wanted to make sure, we had to get, lean and mean and focused early on in 2021. But we also wanted to make sure that we were focused on the key folks that we were going to be expanding our team with. So for those of you who are members, you may have had the pleasure of meeting Bo via telephone or email or chat. And Bo actually came into the team in 2020, and he came over from bnbfinder.com. We had worked with him there, and he heads up all of our customer support. And he's gonna ongoing be focused on what we're moving into a care group of the business. So that's all traveler care and innkeeper owner as well. And at the middle of 2021, we realized as traffic was picking up, as travel was picking up, we really needed some additional focus on marketing. And at that time, the owner, Eric Goldreyer, his son, Nick, graduated from Vanderbilt down in Nashville. And he made the decision, even though he earned his degree in engineering, that, travel was really his passion and what he wanted to do. So it's staying true to our family business and growing B&B Finder and continuing as a family business. Nick joined the team middle of 2021. So we couldn't be more excited. For those of you who are going to be at the ALP conference, or if you're going to CABI actually this coming weekend, both Tim and Nick will be at CABI, and then the full team will be at ALP. So you'll have the chance to meet everyone in person. I was just talking to Bo this morning and asked him if he had been to an innkeeping conference before. And believe it or not, even at bnbfinder.com, he didn't have the opportunity to go. So I'm just thrilled that he'll be able to go and to meet some of you at the conference here in Baltimore. So a couple of things that I wanted to cover before we get into more of the details in the session today is that something that we've done, and a lot of you are familiar with, is we started back in 2008 at bnbfinder.com focusing on leveraging both our innkeeper database and our traveler database. And what this has allowed us to do over the years is to really keep a tight pulse on what's happening in the industry. So certainly when the pandemic hit, we recognized the same opportunity with B&B Finder, and we started to run the quarterly surveys. And for those of you who've seen us present either in a webinar setting or at a conference setting, this is something that's so crucial, and we'll continue to ask for your participation in these surveys. As you can see, these are the summaries from the 2021 innkeeper surveys. by season that we ran each quarter last year. And at the beginning of the year, we ran the winter survey, and you can see that participation did come up over throughout by the end of the year, which is great. The more participation that we can get, the better data that we have to share out with you. That little one there is a little typo on my part, but you can see average of 8 rooms for the properties who participated, and average of 4 years in business. And the same goes for the traveler side of it. So these are the numbers from the travelers who participated in each of the surveys from the quarters. And one of the things that we've been doing differently is also reaching out to travelers who've never stayed at B&Bs. So we were previously engaging with the travelers who are in our database, or travelers who follow us on our social channels. And what we started to do in the summer and fall surveys of last year was to send it out to travelers who either weren't following us on social or weren't friends of our followers, so that we could reach out to a broader audience and really tap into some of the non-B&B goers and start to understand a little bit more about why they don't choose B&Bs or why they haven't stayed. And some of that I've shared in our recent webinar that we did. I will let you know that we're getting ready to launch our spring 2022 survey. So that's going to be going out here this week to all of you. So again, your participation is welcomed, and we're going to be sharing out that data at the ALP conference and our sessions that we'll be hosting and participating in there. So we definitely wanted to take a moment to thank our partners and the folks who helped us get the survey out to more innkeepers. Certainly anyone, if there are other vendors who are on the session with us today, who'd like to help us get the word out for our spring survey, we welcome that. We'd love to get it out to as many innkeepers as possible. And I always say, when we're at conference, whether it's a state conference, if we have a large enough sample size in a particular area, so if, say, Pennsylvania came back and we had a large enough group of innkeepers who participated from that state, we're happy to take the data and do a presentation that's specific to the properties in that area. And we haven't been able to do that as of yet because we haven't had a large enough sample size, but I really look forward to being able to do that and provide some specific state content as well that could be helpful for all of you in those different areas. So when we look at I went back and looked at our presentation from spring of 2021, which again was in February of last year. And when I was looking at this, I was remembering that we were so excited that even from May of 2020 that we started to see some improvement, and we started to see the responses of traveler trending more positive, and that they were feeling more likely to be traveling, or that they were extremely likely to travel when restrictions became were lifted a little bit, and that they were ready when we were. And we also, in that same survey, asked innkeepers if they had started to see bookings again. And this was really the first, I think, turning point that we had seen since things had been locked down. This was the first time when the majority of the properties had said, yes, travel is back. This morning, going through and reading my articles that came in from FocusWire, I thought it was quite timely that there was an article that was saying, travel's back. And it was saying as if it was just happening for this month. And I think that's just such a perfect example of the bit of a roller coaster that we've all been on for the last couple of years, and thinking that we've been through it, and then another variant comes. One of the things that we can say certainly about our industry is that a lot of the innkeepers who we've worked with, there have been many that have been affected, some negatively, a lot that have had business saying that it's been busier than it's ever been. And we're going to dig into some of those analytics as well. So this was the image that I had mentioned earlier when Tim was coming in from Denver, Colorado, back in September 2021. And any of you who've flown through Denver before probably recognize this as being where you enter security. And typically when you look up in DIA, there's no one but travelers just maybe walking through. There certainly isn't a security line that wraps over the entire top part of Denver International Airport. So any of you who have flown recently may have experienced similar situations. I think this is a lot due in part, certainly over the holidays with the delays and other issues that they had. I think previously it really was representative of just a big surge in travel. Just wanted to share that view. I can see Tim sort of laughing there looking at that. Did you want to add something, Tim Wilson?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as Jan said, if anybody's flown through Denver, I've lived in Colorado for 22 years. I've never seen the airport anything remotely close to this. I've seen bad security lines, pretty typically at the airport, but bad security is like in the security area, not all the way around baggage claim and then all the way upstairs. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. It caused me to renew my Clear membership that day because I thought there's no way I'm going to make my flight.
Yes, I think we all renewed our Clear this year too. So I'll actually be traveling this weekend for the first time internationally since the pandemic. I'll be going down to Mexico for a couple of days with a friend who's actually playing a music festival who invited me as their guest. So I'm really curious to see what that experience is like. I don't know if any of you have traveled internationally at all since over the last 2 years, but I thought what was interesting, and I didn't put it in this session, but I did want to mention it, is not only is it the first time I'm traveling internationally, but it's also the first time that I'm traveling as a guest of a larger event, also being international. And I thought what was interesting is the group that's putting this event on, they have a protocol where you have to have a negative COVID test within 72 hours of arrival to the event, regardless of your vaccination status. And then what was also interesting is that in order to re-enter the US, you have to have a negative test within 24 hours. So they're scheduling all of the guests to have tests before they depart. And if anyone tests positive, the event is actually putting them up at the resort for a 10-day quarantine. And this is the first time I've ever seen anything like that. And what it made me think of is, it really instills that confidence in the traveler to say, no matter what, I'm taken care of. When I get there, they've got my back. They want us to be there. They want us to be safe. And if anybody did test positive, then they're also going to make sure that you're taken care of after. So I just thought that was really interesting. So as we experienced in 2021, conferences came back, and we have been at every conference along with so many of the vendors in the industry and the innkeepers in the states that we visited. The first one being the Midwest conference that happened in March of 2021. That was the first one that we went back to. And I have to say, I was really curious of what that experience was going to be like, because we've never had this amount of time pass where we weren't able to meet in person and to be together and to spend time together. And thanks to Julie, who we all loved. I know any of you who had the honor of knowing her. She was an amazing woman, and she put on this conference when we didn't think it was possible. And that was the first one that we came back to. And then we had the ALP regional conference in June. So that was the first conference that, was a little bit larger, and then they grew from there. And certainly, every conference that we've been to, we've just seen more and more innkeepers attending and being there to participate. And we can't wait to see everyone at both CABI and ALP that are coming up here over the next few weeks. So a couple of things that I wanted to touch on as far as where we ended and what the expected end result of 2021 was going to be. Certainly, we're going to follow up with this in our spring survey that we're getting ready to send out. But everything was trending quite positive for expected revenues. And to end out 2021 at pre-pandemic levels. And I included in here, certainly because we had been reporting on revenues from 2019 as well as 2020. So you can see how in each of those different brackets of revenue, what those percentages were and how those were reporting out. And certainly there are a lot of things that go into that, right? There's things like property location. And if you have individual cottages, or you have, different things that different travelers are looking for at different times over the last couple of years, that could have certainly changed the way that your business had been trending. But one of the things that I thought was also really promising was that 59% of the properties who responded specifically in the last survey had said that business had not changed or had improved. So, for business to remain stable or actually improve over the last year is just a great sign overall for the industry. And in our session, when we go in and we review the survey results, what we've been also doing is making sure that we're sharing different strategies that different properties from around the country have shared with us, of ways that they've gotten creative over the last couple of years, whether it's with specials and packages or changing the way that they do their rate plans. So when we host the next webinar to review those spring surveys, or if you're attending one of the sessions at ALP, we'll be sure to continue to share out a lot of those recommendations that other properties have shared with us. In the last survey, we did see that the bookings were going to continue to be strong through winter 2022. So again, I'm very interested to see how this may have been affected with the most recent variant. I don't know, Tim, if you have anything that you'd like to share from different properties that you've been speaking to recently. I myself certainly haven't heard of any big, uptick in cancellations or anything like that. I wonder if you have anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, no, I have not heard much different there too. Really, I mean, the only properties, and this is not, let's say, all inclusive here because I don't talk to everybody, but in my experience, the folks that I'm hearing from that, still, I would say, seem to be having some pretty big challenges with all the pandemic and the travel restrictions seem to be the folks that are in the larger cities or the major metropolitan areas. That in my exposure to this, that's really the only folks that I've heard of that are, still having a difficult time here in terms of their occupancies and being able to operate. I think we're all, I think all guests are understanding that, certain things might be limited in what you can do and can't do when you go visit a property. But, I know, for example, one property in Washington, D.C., where, the thing to do is, of course, go to the museums, go to the Mint, go to all the, sites and things to see there. And I don't know that all of that has, opened up as much as, maybe getting out into, a more rural area, that kind of thing. And so, from what I'm hearing, that's kind of the pulse I have on things. Just that the major metropolitan areas are still kind of, dealing with some challenges, but, outside of that, it's going pretty well from everything I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's great. And that actually makes me think of when we do put together our spring survey results, we can also not only by, location, as I had mentioned previously, if we have enough representation from one state or enough data that we can split it up that way, but we can certainly split it up to look at some of the results based off of if they're in a more metropolitan area, as opposed to, being out in the country and things like that. So one of the things that I wanted to include in here, because I just thought it was really surprising when we asked this back in the fall, was, if you still had restrictions, when were they recently lifted? And I was really surprised to see such a large percentage say that their restrictions were just lifted as of May. So in the spring, and that, regardless of that bookings were still reported to be up. So that's something we'll continue to keep a pulse on to see if there have been any additional restrictions. I think what's a little bit challenging, at least, where I'm located here in Texas, is, Austin, we went back to stage 5. Gosh, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But you know what stage 5 means today is what it meant early on in 2020. It's just completely different. It certainly doesn't seem to have the same effect that it did initially. Really, it's been up to the business owners to decide on what they would like to what they'd like to enforce. So where you may walk into one business and they have a sign that says, wear a mask if you're not vaccinated, or there are some places that I've gone into recently where someone may come in without a mask and then they'll ask them to put one on, they'll hand them a mask. We've seen all types of things. And, I really don't see that part of it changing, because, we went from such strict requirements to very loose here, at least in Texas, to now trying to put back those stages. I just think it's just a challenge. But it is something to think about as what your guests and where your guests are coming from and what they're experiencing. Because, for example, Bo had traveled up to California over the holiday, and he really had been in Texas for most of the pandemic. And, he had mentioned that he was so surprised, going into other states, how so many people are still wearing masks and still doing all these things. And he got back here and it's like, oh, well, is there really any stage that we're actually in anymore? So one thing that we know holds true and will continue to hold true is the flexibility that the traveler had early on and what they continue to experience in the booking process. Certainly the booking flexibility, and as it states here, replaces price as the top priority. And I think we're going to continue to see this. A lot of the experience that travelers have had, especially starting at the beginning of the holiday, is that yes, there's been flexibility, but specifically in the airline industry, there's also been a lot of frustration around being able to use those credits to be able to reach someone in customer service. If any of you had these experiences over the holidays, some of the airlines, no longer accept or offer phone support. You can only get chat support or email support. And, or if you are able to get on a line, you might be holding for 4 or 5 or more hours than that. I actually started a chat over New Year's when I was supposed to go down to Florida to take care of my mom, and ended up having to cancel it. I was on a chat literally for 2 days with the airline that just kept going and going, and it never got resolved. So the reason why I bring that up is because when we think of the traveler and their experience in working with us and working with all of you in the industry as their innkeepers and their hosts, is that they get direct contact with you. They don't have to go through these larger channels, especially when they're booking direct, to be able to connect right with the source of their experience and their stay. And I think that's something that is unparalleled. You can't compare that to any other industry. We really are the best at offering that. So continuing to think of how we can communicate that out to the guests as part of a major value add of choosing to stay at professionally run B&Bs and inns. So when we asked travelers, what was the most important when they were booking, certainly that reflects back to the free cancellation or the flexible cancellation. And the reason why I bring this up, and I have been talking about it a lot over the last several months, is because when we ran our most recent survey and we asked the innkeepers if they had gone back to their normal cancellation policy, 35% said that they had. And that was up 31% from January. So back in January of 2021, only 4% said that they were holding their standard cancellation policy. And then that shot back up at the end of the year. And I think a lot of this, some of it has to do with some of the properties were in their busy season or their peak season when they had reported back on this. So certainly maybe they weren't going to have, more flexible cancellation policies. But I think it's important for us to again, remember what the traveler is experiencing in other types of travel. And these are some policy updates that innkeepers had shared. I think what's great is that last point there of the innkeeper who said that they changed or softened their policy in May of 2020, and they extended it twice due to the Delta variant, there are no refunds, just gift certificates. As a result, they've seen, their cash reserves swell, and they haven't gone back to their regular cancellation policy. They're still honoring that cancellation with the gift certificate or the gift card for them to come back and use it at a future stay. So if you have gone back to implementing your normal cancellation policy, maybe rethinking that and seeing if that's something that you might go back and be more flexible with. When we look at the amount of sites that travelers are going and looking to book, certainly back in 2015, 38 sites before booking Expedia had quoted back then. So we've been really interested, specifically because we are advocates of booking direct, and that's exactly what bnbfinder is about. We want you to own the relationship with the guest. We want to, when you look at a typical, result for Google Analytics for a site, you typically don't want to see a high bounce rate. Well, with bnbfinder, we want to see a high bounce rate or exit to your website. So we are not the typical website. We want to push everything to you. So it's really important that we understand how many sites travelers are going to now before they make a buying decision. And when we looked at this data, it was actually pretty surprising that the majority of travelers said that they went to between 2 and 4 sites. Now, I will say that in talking through this with Tim and some other folks in the industry, I think a lot of this reason is that travelers are a lot more savvy than they used to be. And they realize that if they go to an Expedia, a hotels.com, a Travelocity, it's mostly the same inventory. So now they're picking their favorite of that group and using that one particular site. So I think that that could be some of it as well. But this also is a great example of why we need to be more aware of what those 2 to 4 sites are, and making sure that you have your tracking in place and that you understand where that business is coming from. Asking and looking at the length of stay that we've been seeing, and certainly this is specific directly to the B&B guest, is yes, we've always had long weekends. That's always been typical of our industry. But what's been really interesting is seeing the increase in the short trips or the 4 to 6 night stays. And a lot of this is due in part to travelers being able to be working remotely and realizing that, okay, I can go, like, here I am, I'm going to go on this short trip for the next 5 days. Well, I'm going to be working remotely early next week. And this is something that was really not an option for a lot of folks pre-pandemic. And now with so many businesses choosing to remain remote, I think a lot of travelers are realizing the flexibility and that they can go and stay for longer because they can work from wherever they're at. So a couple of things that we took from that is we added in a search on bnbfinder, that search nearby. And you'll see this on Airbnb and a lot of the other larger travel platforms, is there's definitely been an increase in travelers not only having extended stays, but wanting to book something close by. So I can be in Austin, maybe I want to go up to the hill country for 4 or 5 days because I can be up there, I can work, and I can still have a staycation all at the same time. And what plays into that and the flexibility of the traveler being able to do that is when we ask what the #1 amenity is when they're booking, free Wi-Fi, and not only free Wi-Fi, but having a stable, fast internet connection to where they're going. So they are able to work from wherever they're choosing to stay. And this plays into the whole, I saw this and I thought this is so perfect, the whole not only work from home, but work from the hills. Customized workcation packages available. And we're seeing more and more of this type of packaging and ease of booking being put into action to try and capture those guests who are looking to work and stay. So a couple of things on that for those of you who are members of bnbfinder is, being at all these conferences and sitting down with all of you at the booth as members, being able to go through your listings with you. What we've found is that so often we forget to go back and update your content, right? So if you haven't taken the time to go into your listing, I definitely encourage you to do so, because certainly over the last year, the last several months, we've been adding more and more amenities and more ways for travelers to filter and search for the type of stay that they're looking for. So these popular amenities that you see on this example here on the Texas state page, all those popular amenities that are in the left-hand column, those remain static on all of our search pages. That's for SEO benefit, but also for the traveler to be able to go in and filter for those amenities that they're looking for. So definitely encourage you to go in and update the amenities for your listing. And in addition to that, we wanted to get a sense of what else was the most important feature when they're looking to book. So as we're developing more products at B&B Finder, we really want to make sure that we're catering to what the guest is looking for so that it helps them make the buying decision or the booking decision. So, no surprise here with guest reviews being the leader of what was most important when booking. So a couple of things. One is we looked at, of course, some of the data here that's about the importance of photos, but when you look at the site now, and when you log into your dashboard and you can go in and update your amenities, if you haven't gone in and added the ability to link your Google reviews and your TripAdvisor reviews, you can do that right through your dashboard. And so this is our first step at answering that need of the guest of wanting to see reviews and ratings, while we're working on building out our own platform for that in the future. And certainly, just a reminder for those of you who don't take advantage of sharing those reviews also on your website. I just love this. This was on Jail Hill Inn when I went on, and right on that hero image on their front page, they have reviews with the date of when the review was and where the review was set. Yeah, Tim, I think you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, just one extra comment on the reviews. We went ahead and automatically added all of our members' Google reviews. Google just requires that we show the review rating and the review count there. TripAdvisor, however, requires that we link over to your listing on TripAdvisor. And so we have not automatically added your TripAdvisor reviews, kind of feeling like it makes more sense for you to decide if you want to do that or not. When I go over to TripAdvisor, I might see your competition, you might pay a commission on a reservation, that kind of thing. And so we didn't automatically add your TripAdvisor. If you want to add your TripAdvisor when you're logged in, just under reviews, all you have to do is paste the URL for your listing on TripAdvisor into B&B Finder, and then it'll link it over and show your TripAdvisor reviews. But just know that there will be a link that lets somebody go over to your listing on TripAdvisor, which may be fine, and maybe you don't want that, so we didn't do that automatically for you.
Yeah, perfect. And one thing I wanted to mention was at the bottom, and we're going to show some examples. If you're going in and you're doing some cleanup on your website, or you're going in and making sure that things are up to date, certainly checking the badges that are in the footer possibly, or on your homepage. If you have any old bnbfinder.com badges that are there, just making sure that they're not linked to your old B&B bnbfinder.com listing, because that's just linking out to VRBO. So check on that. And I'm going to show you also how you can add in the link and the badge to your B&B Finder listing on your website as well. It's super easy to add at all the conferences. If I was working with an innkeeper who didn't have it, I'd just send that code right over to their webmaster. If they had access to add or update their website, we could do that as well while we were there. So I've also had this quote in recent presentations that I've done, and it's so perfect for, when we think that we're communicating something, but the single biggest problem is the illusion that that communication has taken place. And it's certainly easy to do. And when we think about travelers and how safe they feel with traveling, and again, it's going to be great to compare this to what we see in our survey that is being launched this week, but that confidence level has definitely increased, and clearly that's why we've seen the increase in travel. But when I think about this, and this was just a word cloud that I had put together from different comments that guests had made about the things that were in place that made them feel more confident about traveling. And again, thinking about this from the guest's perspective and where they're coming from, and not necessarily about what's just happening with your specific state. There are some states where, you know, the regulations or the mandates, you know, have been lifted again, some that they've been tightened down. So it really is, you know, all over the board, depending on where your traveler is coming from. And I put this particular suggestion in an early presentation after I saw it come across in one of the Focus Wire articles. And you know, back then we weren't really wearing masks anymore when I had been talking about it. And I remember saying, you know, if we have to go back to this at some point, wouldn't it be great, you know, if you could have a photo of what you actually look like with the mask on? And this was a hotel group who had done this. So at ALP, we of course are going to be wearing masks in the conference space and in the indoor areas. So we're definitely going, not that you don't know what we look like, but that's going to be a perfect time to have a pin with what we actually look like on our badges. So I just thought, what a great idea, something so simple, but you know, when you just have that part of your face covered, it's just, you lose a lot from being able to see what people look like. And you know, I put this in here because just in August, when I was at the Texas conference and I was presenting, and we were talking about some updates for things that properties were doing for COVID at their properties and sanitation and all of this. There was an innkeeper who raised their hand and said, you know, Janice, well, this is over, you know, so why do I need, you know, do I really need to go in and make these updates to my website? And, you know, I think about that because, you know, at the end of August, things were looking great. You know, we anticipated that, yes, there would be another variant. We didn't know, you know, of course, when it would come. They thought it would be winter. But there really was this sense that, you know, it could be over, especially, you know, in our area. And so clearly we know that, you know, isn't the case today. So I think it's going to continue to be an important part of our communication to our guests. And if there's anything that you're continuing to doing as far as, you know, social distancing or requirements of staff. And this is some things that other properties and innkeepers had shared in the comments of other policies that they had been enforcing. Some of them unvaccinated guests, you know, needing to have taking the tray for breakfast to their room, masks required if not vaccinated, staff wearing masks. And what I think was interesting is that when we asked the innkeepers who had implemented or continued to implement safety measures, if they had received backlash from their guests, and, you know, clearly, you know, 92% of properties who had done this had not received, you know, backlash or complaints from the guests. So I think that's just a really positive sign. For the properties who have been busy, we asked them, despite COVID, why they, you know, attributed the reasons to being busy. And number one was the communication of their protocols. And so the reason why I put this on here is because, again, making sure that, you know, you're not only aware of the updates on your website, but things that you can make sure and go back and revisit on your listing on bnbfinder to make sure that they're up to date and current with where we sit today. And so you, of course, have the option to go in and put a link to any kind of a COVID safe policy page that you have on your site. And then we have all of the safety features that we still have in your dashboard that you can select. I think some of these we're planning on going in and updating. Some of them might not be as applicable as they were at the beginning of the pandemic, but certainly a lot of them, you know, still are, where guests want to know, you know, can I have room in-room breakfast and taking safety measures and things like that. And then also, of course, using your description in your listing to be able to include any other additional copy or things that you want to communicate with your guests. And these are just some more great ideas that other innkeepers had shared with us about ways that they had increased or changed some of the ways that they were increasing the revenue into the business. So again, of course, updating your listings, but also, reaching out to us so that we can help guide you through this process. We've had this and talked about it for years that, half of the money that you spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is you don't know which half. The fact that I've said this so many times and we still have the conversation with innkeepers around Google Analytics. This is something that we've been talking about not only since October 2008. This is an old article that I dug up through the Wayback Machine that you can go to if you ever want a good laugh. It's unbelievable. You can go back to almost any website and see what they looked like. This was bedandbreakfast.com back in 2008, an article that Eric and Sandy had written about Google Analytics and why you need to use it to measure the business that you're getting from the different sites that you're listing on. And for B&B Finder, because we are sending all of the traffic to your website, this is more important than ever for you to make sure your analytics are set up, also that they're set up correctly so that you are tracking the revenue that is coming from our site through to your booking engine. And something that we just discussed in our offsite and working on for 2022 certainly is an internal dashboard where you can measure, we'll be able to track all of the history of your gift card redemptions through us, some of the high level traffic, but really making sure that your Google Analytics is set up properly is really the first step. And this is just some sample data from a property that we've been working with and that they had shared for their results from January through November of 2021. And you can see clearly that they can see not only the traffic that's coming from B&B Finder, but the revenue that's also resulted from their listing. So if you need any guidance in Google Analytics, if you want to set up a time with Tim to go through, he has a link. We'll be sharing it out in our post webinar email to you. That's going to go out tomorrow, and that'll have a link that you can set up a one-on-one with him. He's an expert at all things showing value and through Google Analytics with clients, and definitely would love to be able to help make sure that you have this set up properly. You want to add something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, anybody who's working with one of the professional marketers in the industry, an Acorn or a Whitestone or an Odysseus, or any of the professionals that cater to this industry, as I understand, they should all have your Google Analytics set up for you. And so if you're not going into Google Analytics, I'll say there's a million different links in there, and it can be incredibly overwhelming, and you can get lost in pretty quick because there's so much you truly can do in there. But there's a couple, I think, pretty simple, pretty straightforward reports in there that can help, see a lot of what your marketing channels are doing for you. And so for me personally, just in the past couple of weeks here, I've actually had a couple of Zoom calls with some innkeepers who know that they have Google Analytics, but just, had not spent much time in there themselves because, I don't know that it's necessarily anybody's forte to be really good in Google Analytics. But to know kind of the basics in there can be super beneficial. And just in, I would say the last two of these calls that I've had with properties where, there was some question, hey, what's B&B Finder doing for me? I think I want to opt out of my membership. And I thought, gosh, wow, really? Your pricing's pretty great. And, I'm hearing from other folks that we're, doing well for them. I have to think we're doing well for you guys too. And so we set up Zoom calls and went into their Google Analytics. And in both cases, both properties that I've done this with, one was up in Michigan and one was actually in Texas, but neither one of them had, been in their Google Analytics and really, taken a look at what their various marketing partners are doing for them. And I would say, I would use the word shocked. Both of them were pretty shocked to see what, in fact, we were doing for them. So much so that, they thanked me up and down, left and right for the call. And oh my gosh, I had no idea, this data was even available to me. And wow, it was really neat just to, I think we on this end kind of, have done this for so long, and we kind of just assume that, oh, everybody's in there, looking at their Google Analytics. And I just maybe that's not the case. And so anyway, at least for these two folks, it was pretty awesome to go in there and see, that boy, I think one of them, we were their third largest referring source of traffic and revenue, and the other one, we were the fourth largest source of revenue and traffic. And so I think to both of them, it was quite a shock, and they were glad to have had the call to understand that and see that a little more clearly. So it was pretty fun for me on this end, being able to do that.
Yeah, I love that too, because, it's such a great testament to, all of the initiatives that we prioritized over the last year, and what we wanted to push to continue to add value for all of our members. So we love the opportunity to do this, because when we get to see that side of it and we get to really dig into your analytics, it just validates all of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. And it's just great to be able to see those results coming through for you. So yeah, absolutely. If you're interested and want to set up that time with Tim, definitely do so.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, for us too, it's, we see it here, we see it there, but the more properties that we're looking at, sort of across the country, and seeing, consistent results, as Janice just said, for us, it feels really good to, kind of see, oh, wow, what we're doing is actually working, and it's working well, and we can see it here, and we can see it here, and we can see it there. And it's not just one person, it's working in a lot of ways and for a lot of people. So it's, for us, been very fun.
Also too, I'd add to that at the same time, for anyone, if it isn't working, if we see something that's just so obvious that says, okay, this isn't working for this particular property in this particular area, then what can we do to help increase their exposure? So one thing, I don't have it necessarily in this presentation, but for all of you that were previously bnbfinder.com members, you probably remember that we had something called Second City Listings. And anytime that I sit down with a property at a conference, it's so fun, because I get to, go through the history and say, okay, we learned from the things that we did really well that we wanted to continue to do. And then the things that didn't work so well for innkeepers that we wanted to improve on. Some of those things I'm going to share with you now. And specifically, in going back to, our mission of making sure that you own the relationship with the guests, that we're passing the traffic on to you, that the direct booking happens through you. We want to make sure that we can get as many travelers out to your website as possible. So the way that our searches work on bnbfinder is a little bit different than bnbfinder.com, right? Because at bnbfinder.com, we had both our membership platform where you could sign up and have the flat rate, but then we also had online reservations that we charge commissions for. So, it was a bit of this split personality where we had really two goals as a business. Well, our goal at bnb finder is very clear, and it's one, and it's direct, and it's the one that I just stated. So if you are in an area, or there are other destinations that we can include you in, certainly we want to keep with the same, the same method that we've always used, and making sure that it's relevant to the traveler. So we don't want to put you in searches where you're 70 miles away from what the initial search was, but anything within reason, we're happy to make sure that we can get you included in as many searches as possible. And that's all included in your regular monthly fee. There's no additional charge for that. So a couple of things that I wanted to update. I know we're getting close to the hour here. So things that we worked on end of 2021, and things that we pushed in the last quarter and are continuing to build on through early 2022. So we redesigned and relaunched our gift card program. And this is on the traveler side. And our goal was really clearly to increase the exposure of the bnb finder gift cards, and also reach more travelers, increase sales, and all of this is what, to you, coming back, is going to bring more business to all of your properties. Because when you're a member of bnb finder and you are accepting the gift cards, we went back in, I think it was the middle of 2021 was when we made the change. And when we initially relaunched the company through this team, we had the 15% commission, which was in place when we acquired the business. And we made the decision last year that we really wanted to make it affordable, and we wanted it to be the most positive experience, both for travelers having a large amount of properties to choose from to redeem cards. And then also on the innkeeper side of it, we decided to take that 15% commission off from the program. And we have a 3.5 processing fee. That's because that's what Stripe charges us to process the payment out to you for the gift card redemption. But that was a huge win, both for the travelers and for our members. And as we've increased gift card sales, I think for the year last year, we were up year over year, 2021 over 2020. I think we were up like 130% increase in gift card sales year over year, which is fantastic. And that's that many more travelers who are getting exposure to professional B&Bs, and also the flexibility on the low processing fee side of it for all of our members as well. And those two were great wins just for our members and for the exposure. And then we also went in and implemented a new process in your dashboard to make it easier for you to redeem gift cards. This is something that we're continuing to work on as we speak. And so now any of you who've gone in and redeemed gift cards, you see in your dashboard that you can go in, you can put in the information as opposed to filling out a form. And our redemptions are paid out twice a month. I think it's the 15th and the 30th, something like that, for those payments. And all of that is managed by Bo. And we're looking at taking this even a step further to automate it and making it a little bit more of a fast process for you. And of course, adding direct deposit, things like that last year. And then we also just recently at the end of Q4, we added in a chat function on the site. And this is a brand new feature that we added. Certainly we're going in and we're tweaking it and improving it as we go along. But our goal is really to provide you with the easiest ways possible to connect with our team. We know that that's been a challenge as we had, streamlined the team early in 2021. And I'm really excited about some of the things that Bo's going to be working on and putting together for all of you on the care side of the business. So I mentioned earlier about the badges, and if you are a member, we definitely encourage you to go in and add the copy of the badge to the site. We can show you how to do that. Some of the initiatives that we're going to be working on in early 2022, partnering with Book Direct Education. And for any of you who aren't familiar with this organization, the actual Book Direct Education Day is February 2nd. Of 2022. And this was a group, that's the website there, bookdirect.education. And this was put together by Lisa Acorn. And at the time, early on, it was AIHP and PI, which is now, of course, ALP. And this is just a great way to share throughout the industry the importance of booking direct. And we're going to be working on some ways clearly to share that out with our traveler database and our social channels, and really do a big push to educate travelers on the importance of booking direct and really everything that we stand for as a business. Also in February is going to be a big month. Not only is it ALP conference, but it's also Book Direct Day, and it is the week of February 7th through the 11th. It is the, I have to go back and look how many annual B&B weeks this has been since I started working with Wheel of Fortune, but this is going to be huge. We're going to be sending out an email to clearly all of our travelers and all of that, announcing it, but also to the member inns who participated in this. And this year is going to be really special, not only because it's launching right before Valentine's Day. So, it's typically a busy time for a lot of you at the inns, and just a great time to celebrate the romance and all the things. But there's some exciting things that I can't mention that have to do with this week that this show has shared with me that is just going to make this B&B week probably the biggest in the history that since we've worked with them. We always see a huge increase in traffic the site during this week and to the members who are participating. But it's going to be even more because of some exciting things that happened on the show. So I will leave it at that before I say too much. And then one of the other things I wanted to share that we're really excited about launching and getting out in the first quarter of 2022 is our iOS app. And this really is the first dedicated industry iOS app at this scale, because of, not only the number of properties that are listed on it, but also the functionality that our developers are putting into this. And we are, we've always been focused on a mobile first approach. This really just takes it to the next level. So really excited to be able to get working on the marketing side of this and converting our mobile users over to using the app, and just watching how they interact and how much easier it is for them to communicate with you. Some things that we're looking at implementing are some chat features, texting, things like that. So when we move into more product rollouts in 2022, we're also going to be, as I mentioned before, having some user groups, some feedback groups that we'll be hosting through Zoom with video, so we can see all of your faces and really engage and open that conversation between ourselves, the dev team, and all of you as innkeepers and members. So that's something we're certainly looking forward to as we head into 2022. So I hope this was an informative hour that we spent together, and I know some of the things were recaps of some things that we had shared previously, but I really felt that it was timely and important to do some of those reminders as well. So I know we're just a few minutes over our slot here, but if there's any questions that came in, Tim, that you feel like we want to answer before we wrap up today, we can certainly do that. Again, we'll be sending out the recording as well as the PDF and a link for you to set up a one-on-one call with Tim to go through your Google Analytics or to answer any questions. If there's something that you want to take some time to update your listing, so to update your content, or you have photo questions or anything like that, we'll also include a link for you to book time with Bo, and he can help manage any of the content that's on your listing, or help you with anything that's gift card or ins for sale related as well.
It looks like one question we have was just, when will the app launch? So maybe if you want to touch on that one.
Yeah, so we just had our offsite 2022 full planning meeting that happened at the end of last week, where we got a lot of our requirements and things really fine-tuned for the first quarter. So I actually have a dev meeting follow up from that meeting tomorrow, and we're going to have a better idea of the actual launch date, probably sometime in the next week or so. So I don't want to share out a date and then have it, potentially get pushed until I know, but the goal is to have that out certainly in Q1, hopefully sooner in Q1 than later, but definitely before the big push for summer travel.
And I would just say too, Peter was who asked that question, but the app is live, it works. We have it on our phones here internally. So it exists. It's just not been rolled out for public consumption yet. We're, just kind of hammering away on it and trying to work out any kinks or bugs, that kind of thing. But it is out there live. It's just not out live to the masses just yet.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see my phone, but probably not very well with that, but that's the app on my telephone. So yeah, we're doing Q&A and things on it now. So it's super, super exciting.
We're close.
Was there anything else that came up we want to answer today?
Kathleen was talking about, it's a little bit outside of the scope of the webinar, but she was just talking about asking if, we had heard about some of the lawsuits that are happening with folks on Expedia as it relates to some of the ADA stuff. And I just had commented to her, I've heard about that from one other property. I haven't heard about it from a ton of folks yet. But just that I know that, these folks are out there that are, targeting small businesses and trying to I think, poke holes in the ADA laws. And the latest one on that front seems to be folks being targeted who have advertisements on the OTAs, where the OTA seems to not even, offer you as the innkeeper the ability to address, any ADA type of questions. And so it's just fascinating to me that, a judge would even permit this type of lawsuit when, you're on an OTA website and kind of given what you are given to display about your property. But I think these folks in my exposure to it will seem to stop at nothing. So it just kind of seems like it goes from one thing to the next with some of these ADA lawsuits. But I don't know if many of you guys are running into that yet or not. But I have heard about it from one property, and then Kathleen mentioned it here on the call too.
Yeah. And I think, is that coming from the perspective of the website being ADA compliant or the property?
I have limited exposure to it, but as I understand, it's the property's ADA compliance as it relates to how they are positioned on the OTA site, from what I have heard about it. So
yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Kathleen. That's something that we're looking into. I'm specifically looking into it from the approach that Airbnb has recently taken with it. And that, I don't know, they did a winter update of some of the things that they are releasing. And one of the things was to make sure that the listings and how properties are reporting if they have, roll-in showers, what does it mean to be ADA compliant really? And what are the different filters or the different ways that you can communicate that on your listing? So I think it's an interesting thing for us to consider in 2022. That being said, and also to Tim's point, it's a slippery slope, I think, when you try to get that granular with it. Certainly because what is required in one even county or city, never mind state, can be completely different from one to the other. So, but I do think it's something that is worth looking into.
Yeah, it sounds like from Kathleen here, she says that that the litigators are basically maintaining that the property hired the OTA to market their property. So they're claiming that the property is responsible because they engaged with and hired the OTA to promote their property. So anyway, like I said, I don't know a ton about it. I had heard from one other property about this, but it sounds like it's kind of making its way around maybe a little bit.
Yeah, that's good to know. Anything else that we have?
I didn't have any others here.
So as I mentioned, we'll send out the recording to everyone tomorrow. Please engage with the team. They're here for you. We want to make sure that we can take, the best care possible of all of you, especially with all of the great care that you take care of for all the guests. And if it wasn't for you, there would be no industry. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We just are so excited to head into 2022, and there's just so much that is going to be happening, and we can't wait to celebrate with you all soon. So please let us know if there's anything else we can do to help, and have a great afternoon. Hopefully we'll see most of you over the next couple weeks at conference.
Thanks for being here, guys. Great to hear your questions and have you here and see your names as our attendees. And we'll see you guys soon in Baltimore, to anybody that'll be there, or Cabby, if you'll be there next week. I'll see you there.
Awesome. And stay tuned for our first session of product feedback in our little innkeeper groups. We can't wait to get those kicked off. So talk to everyone soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.